Merry Halloween, everybody. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you a necklace that is made out of nail acrylic. And so this is the same products that you would use on your nails, plus a little bit of wire and jewelry works to make a necklace. And it is super heavy, super durable. I love it. It's a black hat. I have a black hat, so this one is extra near and dear to my heart. I hope you like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe so my future videos as well.
We are going to begin this amazing little design by creating a drawing for our cat. I have this bar bead that I'm going to just trace the line of to give me the right curve to sculpt my cat and to make my cat template. So I just traced that. Was a little rough trace, but it works. And then I'm going to sketch the rest of my sleepy kitty on this piece of paper. Using this same template, if you wanted to, you could make multiple cats. So you could do different colors. You could make some that, like say you wanted to make a whole series of your own cats. And I do have an all black kitty, so this one is already just like my Cammy. So I've got the whole shape of the body kind of sculpted in here. I've got the two back feet. I'm assuming the other front paw is tucked in underneath this cat. So we're only going to do one front paw. She's got 3 visible feet, which I think is fine. You know, cats sleep in some of the strangest ways. So we're going to then lay a nail form backing over the top of the drawing. As you are beginning to sculpt this, do not sculpt the back foot that is hanging down. Only sculpt the one that is, you actually don't have to sculpt really much of anything to start out with the paw that is forward. The one that's hanging down is going to be behind the rest of this. It's going to go on the other side of that silver bar. So that one is going to be sculpted separately. At this point, what you're going to be sculpting is the butt, the head, the front arm, and the tail. So don't do the ears and don't do that other foot. After you have this sculpted, you can sort of slide that over, and then you're going to, again, same nail form backing, you're going to sculpt that back foot. I don't have it sketched because it's behind the cat, behind the drawing, but you're going to need to extend the leg up far enough where it'll be able to attach to the back side of the necklace. But sculpt that little foot in. Oh, it's so fun to sculpt cats because there's so much shape with them. It's, yeah, and if you're a cat person, it's all fun. After the first piece has been hardened and it's able to be peeled off the nail form backing, hold it on to that little bar shape, that little bar bead, and just keep it in place with some acrylic until it sets. And you can kind of move it a little bit. It might still wiggle slightly because that first bead I used was very tiny to hold it in place just long enough that I can grab a bigger bead of acrylic to better blend the cat onto that metal piece. As you are doing this, thicken up the entire cat. When I'm making earrings, which you guys, I have a really cute pair of earrings coming at the end of this week. So if you are a jewelry person and you like to work with acrylic, definitely come back for that video. But otherwise, just side note there. When I'm making earrings, I try to make my acrylic, I try to balance thinness with strength because I don't want them to get too heavy. I am not that worried about the weight with the acrylic because this necklace, I want it to have the weight so it stays hanging down. After I have the first layer of the thickness added to the back of this cat, I'm going to grab the back foot and I'm going to add it onto the back of the cat with a bead of acrylic. Check it from the front of the cat, so turn it around, look at it from the front, make sure that that leg is hanging at the right angle that you want it to be and it's, you know, as far down as you want it, because after you add these other layers of acrylic over the top of it, it will not be going anywhere. And make sure that you add more acrylic to the back of the tail, back of the front arm, over the back of the head, everywhere. And use clear acrylic. Don't use your black acrylic for this. The clear acrylic is going to be stronger. It's going to hold onto the wire better. It's going to make this whole thing way more durable. And that is really, really what you want. But now switching back to the front of the cat, you are going to go back to black acrylic and add all of the necessary details. Depending on how crazy you want to get with this, I would suggest taking a silicone tool and adding a little bit of fur texture. If you're wondering why my video looks so bleached out, I did that intentionally. I edited the lighting a little bit when I was making the video for you so that you can actually see the details of the black acrylic. Usually in videos when I'm working with black acrylic, you can't see anything because it just looks solid black, like a black hole. But I decided this time, like, you know what, I'm going to mess with this a little bit. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more visibility out of this. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. Looks a little bit washed out, but you can actually see what I'm doing. So add more to the tail, add a little fur texture. That part is optional. I went back and forth on whether or not I thought I wanted to add a fur texture. If this was going to be a long-haired cat, it would definitely be advantageous to add that fur texture. It would really sell just the general look of the cat. However, Not most black cats, but most Halloween cats are depicted as being a short-haired cat. And my cat, my Cammy, is also a short-haired black cat. So I was like, do I really need to add this? Because when she's just walking around, you don't see fur texture. You just see sleek black ninja is what you see when she's walking past you. But then my need for excessive detail won out, and I did add the fur texture, evidently. So it's up to you, kind of a back and forth, whatever you think, whatever you want to do. It's fun to add fur texture. I've sculpted different animals and different things, mostly with polymer clay, and this was a long time ago. And I always added the fur texture because I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. It was almost therapeutic, you just add those little lines, and with that, you could take as much time as you wanted to. That isn't the case with acrylic. You have to be working quickly, so that gives a different challenge when you're adding the fur texture because you can't second guess yourself. You can't be like, oh, that's going in the wrong direction, and smooth it out with your finger and add the fur texture back in. So if you've never done fur texture with any kind of a sculpting medium, maybe you won't want to do it. I don't know. It's a challenge. Go for it. But just like I said before, it's also personal preference as far as the design goes. I'm going to add another thickness to the elbow of the front arm. When you're adding those different areas, the body of the cat is going to be behind, like the furthest, thinnest area. Then the hip, the back hip is going to be a nice round shape, toes sticking out underneath that hip, and then the arm, you're going to have to blend that up into the shoulder so that there isn't a sharp edge. It's all a balance between having the areas that are defined and like a sharper line, like the back of the elbow, the hip, and then blending them out so that they look like they are just a continuous part of the cat and not separate pieces that were glued together. Add a little bit more acrylic to the paw that is sticking out from behind. And then as you're doing that, where you're adding a little bit of thickness to the paw, make it so that there's like a flat side on one edge and it almost comes up in a triangular point. So it's thicker on the one edge of the back foot and thinner on the other edge. That'll give it, again, we're all just kind of just going for more shape, more definition. And the foot usually is hanging down kind of at an angle. So that'll help kind of sell that angled look. Add some specific toes to the back foot. I am using 3 toes on my cat for the front and the back feet, which is incorrect. They have 4 toes. And I'm usually somebody that is so anatomically correct with things. I try to be exactly how it's supposed to be. For some reason, with this cat, 3 toes just seem to feel better, especially the ones like on that front paw that are stretched out. 3 just looked better when I was doodling and figuring this out. So I went with 3. If you want to be more correct and just, exactly how it's supposed to be, obviously add a 4th toe. But sometimes creative liberty and stuff just wins out. Add another layer of acrylic over the head. Same thing with like the shoulder, or you want to have a nice sharper edge on the chin, and then start building up the cheeks. I am doing this cat a little differently than how I would typically sculpt a cartoon style cat. I would usually just do nice circular cheek balls, but because I want this to be not realistic by any means, but more of a cartoon realism, I'm going to be blending that out a little bit to the sides and making it a little bit less just precise spheres. I'm going to add a little bit of acrylic to the middle of his nose, blending that back and up, kind of figuring out where those eyes are going to be placed. Leave the areas where the eyes are going to be without extra acrylic at this point, so that they're just kind of a little indent or a little hole there. You don't want to add too much to them where it'll be too thick once you start sculpting in the eyelids in a moment. So just kind of add that eyebrow area and leave the eyes alone. Add the lower lip. Because this kitty cat is sleeping so soundly, I'm going to make his mouth slightly open. So just stick my brush right in the middle there and sort of pull it down so that there's a little lip sticking out. Again, this is partially supposed to be a replica of my cat, and she does occasionally sleep with not her mouth open, but she'll sleep with just the very tip of her tongue sticking out. And it's so noticeable because she's this silky black cat and then this tiny little sliver of a pink tongue. I'm going to add a little bit more acrylic here and there to blend that mouth down to the chin. Still adding a little bit of fur texture. And then to do the eyes, I'm going to add a layer of acrylic inside one of the eyes and then just carve a nice little lash line with the tip of my brush. Do the same thing with the other side. So lay that thin coat of acrylic down and then just drag the very tip of your brush right through it to make the lash line or the space where the 2 eyelids meet. After you have that done, and if you do need to add a little bit more acrylic to any part of it, go ahead. kind of fill it out if it needs it. The big thing is that you just have a ridge where the eye is closed, so that when you go to detail this later and you add a highlight to the eyelid, it'll really make a nice vivid line to show you that the cat's eyes are closed. It's a sleepy kitty. A little bit more to the eyebrows. I'm going to actually sculpt eyebrows into my cat, more humanoid eyebrows than what cats have. Again, we're doing a cartoon realistic here, so there's the realistic details as far as how, like, adding in the fur texture and things of that nature. But then, you know, it's a character still. It's like a cat caricature. Add the other eyebrow on the other side. All of this still is just being done with black acrylic, making it so that at this point, if you were to look at this cat and it was on somebody, you would miss all this hard work that is being sculpted in. And so the most important thing with this design, as with a lot of designs that are like this, is actually the finishing work, painting the last little bit. That goes quickly, but it is so critical to make sure that all of the work that you did before that, the time-consuming part, is visible and can be appreciated and can be seen. Going to keep adding a little bit more shape here and there until I'm happy with the cat's face. Once I am, I'm going to lay a nail form backing over my drawing again, and I'm going to sculpt an ear that is wider than the ear that I drew. About the same height, but make sure that it's wider. Let that set until it begins to turn matte. Once it's at that point, slide your brush underneath, pick it up, place the ear on the back of the cat's head, and then you're going to bend it into position. I'm going to use a dotting tool to help me get that fine little point on the end of the cat's ear, but you want to curve the sides of the ear in on itself a little bit so that it looks like you can look into the ear and look down in. After you have done one ear, go ahead and do the other one. You can certainly use the exact same ear on the drawing that you used from the first one, because in fact, you might as well. That'll possibly give you closer to the same size from one ear to the other. So after you have the second one all sculpted, pat it out, same thing, wait for it to turn matte. Once it has, go ahead and pick that up and place it on the back of your cat's head, trying to make sure that you look to make sure that it is positioned symmetrically from one side of the cat's head to the other, kind of tipped up at the same angle, about the same width once you start pinching it. The second ear is by far more difficult than the first ear, just because you're trying to replicate what you have already done. After you have your ears down and they're on the cat, take more black acrylic, and especially on the back of the head, thicken them up, blend them out so that they are going to stay. If you don't add any more acrylic, even if they feel like you can wiggle them, you're like, yeah, they're attached. If they get bumped just the wrong way, there's nothing that's really knitting them together to the cat that they will break off. And we don't want that to happen. You don't want to do all of this and then wear it twice and have an ear break off or the tail break off or a leg break off. You want this to be secure. You want everything that you're doing to just, be durable. That's kind of the idea. I was looking at my little drawing and I was looking at my cat, and I decided his rump needed a little bit more fluffiness. So I added a bead of acrylic right to the back of the rump and then just blended that in with a shimmery, very pale pink acrylic. This is one of my absolute favorite colors. You don't really see it in the video, but it is stunning. I'm going to add a little bit of color to the inside of the ear, the inside of the mouth, the nose, and the little toe beans. As you are adding this little color, I am not using a bright pink. If I was making a cat that was a different color, especially a brown tone cat, then I would definitely use a more pigmented shade of pink, or a brighter shade of pink, not neon, but just more of a classic, pink color. But because this is a black cat and a lot of parts of them are actually fairly white, like the inside of my cat's ears are white, they're bright white, I'm going to use this icy pink color because it'll just look a little bit more natural. She does have black toe beans, but in the spirit of making sure that those toe beans, which are the best part of a cat, show, I'm going to make those that nice little icy pink color. Now this is the part, like I said, where all of your hard work comes into play. So I'm going to take some diluted gray paint and I'm going to start washing over the cat with that color. As you are doing this, you will start noticing that fur texture become visible, and at this point it actually looks really shocking how bright this gray looks, especially since I didn't adjust the color so you can see how pitch black the black looks. But don't get intimidated at this point. After you have done that with the lighter gray, mix a little bit of black into your gray and wash over this again, blending things out so that it isn't so dramatic between the light gray and the black, and just keep adding layers going back and forth between a brighter color, a darker color. You can go in straight with black if you want to. and just making sure that everything is visible. Hold your cat away from you. Depending on your vision, maybe that will help or not help if you've got, if you're short-sighted or something, but hold your cat away from you and make sure that from a distance you can still see the detail. It still looks like, you know, you can see the feet, you can see the hip, the toes, the tail, eyes. If after you've done that you can't see something, you're like, yeah, it's just not quite as defined as I'd like it to be, make it brighter. It may seem counterintuitive to make a black cat with lots of gray on it, lots of gray highlights, but if that's what you need to do to make it so that you can see all of the work, then that's what you need to do. With just the light gray paint, not diluted, just bright light gray, I'm going to add a line right along the eyelid where the eyes are closed on the kitty to make those very, very obvious that this cat has sleepy little eyes. And then I'm going to do 3 dots of that light gray color on the cheeks for where the whiskers would come out if your kitty cat had visible whiskers. I'm also going to use that light gray just to brighten up the very edge of the ears. And then any other places I feel like need that highlight. A couple little fur lines on the hip. This is what I'm saying as far as make sure that all of these parts are defined. So when you look at them from a distance, you can see them. So any of the places that seem like they weren't quite vivid enough, go through with this light gray. It's like a light French gray, and add a couple little dashed lines. That'll give you a little more definition. And then any place that if you look further away, it seems like it's too light, too bright, you can do the same thing with black lines. You can add a couple little dashed black lines if you need to. Now taking a piece of fine jewelry wire, I'm going to create a little curlicue with my cone-shaped wire tool. I'm going to cut off the extra wire, string the wire through that bar that the cat is sleeping on, and then make the curlicue the same way on the other side. If it ends up where your curlicue on the other side gets to be too long, which mine did, it was too many curls around, then open up the last curl or however many curls you need to remove. Kind of just peel them open, bend it open, cut it off. Actually, my wire tool wasn't the best tool to cut this off. I ended up using my fingernail clippers to cut it really close to the other curve. That works really well. I have a specific pair of fingernail clippers that I use just to cut wire. It's my wire tool. I'm going to open up some jump rings, one for each side of the cat to start with. So open those up and then swipe them through. Grab a piece of chain that I'm going to use for the necklace, and I'm going to string it through one side. So I'm going to have the jump ring around both the cat and the end of that chain. Close it, and then after you cut off the length of chain that you need, secure it to the other side with the other jump ring. Close that. Then I'm going to hold the necklace so that I've got the halfway point, and I'm going to cut the chain right on that halfway point, and I'm going to attach a jump ring to the one side. I'm going to open it up, grab a lobster clip, then add the chain through it, close that. This is basic jewelry, you know how you do the metal works. It's just kind of helpful to see it sometimes. In future necklaces that I make using kind of the same recipe, I probably won't include this part, but for this one I figured you needed to see it, especially the first time. And here's how that necklace looks. I love it so much. I will wear this year round. It is not Halloween only for me. A little cat necklace is something that I think could accessorize any outfit whatsoever. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.